I don't know if you've heard about Rush Limbaugh. He said, so predictable, so childish, so immature, it's led to a number of people making abject fools of themselves. The sheriff has made a fool of himself. I don't know if he knows it yet or not. By accusing people that have nothing whatsoever to do with this sordid, unfortunate event as accomplices to murder. It's silly on its face.
Well, the kind of rhetoric that flows from people like Rush Limbaugh, in my judgment, he's irresponsible, uses partial information, sometimes wrong information, attacks people, angers them against government, angers them against elected officials, and that kind of behavior, in my opinion, is not without consequences, and I think he's irresponsible.
But I guess the question being asked is it right to link it to this horrible incident?
Well,
or is
that's
it something
my opinion. People can have their own opinions. The listeners, the viewers, can judge for themselves. But
yes, but Sheriff A-hole, if I might be so bold as to ask you to support your opinion because it's an incredibly strong accusation in the wake of a horrifying slaughter. So please do tell, how did you come by this opinion that you're expressing, sir? But he won't.
That is Sheriff Dupnick, and you've probably seen him by now. Minutes after the shooting happened, he was up at a podium saying that anger in the media is what caused this. And then he always says, but when he's pressed on it, it's just my opinion.
Right.
Well, that's a hell of an opinion to throw out there.
Yeah, hey, I think you owe it to us to support that, sir.
And come on, how many of you actually believe this? I mean, you really think... I hate to mention other radio hosts that we, in theory, compete against.
And usually beat, by the way.
But whether it's...
Not beat. I don't mean beat. Was that too hated a rhetoric? Hit the dump button.
Whether it's Rush Limbaugh or Glenn Beck or whatever. Do you really think that what they do is dramatically different from what the lead guy, the face of MSNBC, for instance, Keith Olbermann does?
Right.
Really? You don't really believe that, do you? I mean, honestly... Well, I guess I know the answer to that. I guess I know the answer to that because I know some of you are the other way around.
Certainly. Absolutely. You're all Fruit Loops, if you ask me. But, well, tell you what.
But this Clarence Dupnick, the part of it that pisses me off, that always makes me so mad, is whenever he throws in talk about bigotry and that sort of thing, because he's talking about that Arizona immigration law.
Right.
So if you oppose trying to have any sort of border reform... Well, then clearly you're a hateful racist, and that leads to shootings. You've got to have open borders, or any conversation about it is going to lead to shootings.
Exactly.
Oh, shut the hell up.
I'm telling you.
I didn't know Tucson was such a Berkeley by the border. I didn't know that.
So, yeah, as it turns out, well, by Arizona standards it is anyway, but I didn't know that either. I've never been to Tucson.
This guy sounds pretty far out there, and he gets reelected over and over.
Yeah. Well, sheriff races are kind of a funny thing. You know what I mean? They're a funnier beast because, if the guy has a decent record of putting people in jail and hasn't done anything completely stupid, the politics of it are...
But he's right on the Mexican border, and he calls people who want to do anything about border enforcement racists.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's it. See, you know what? Well, God dang it. It's funny. I'm torn between this...
and accessories to murder now.
Exactly. I'm torn between this flaming enthusiasm for jumping into this fight and arguing them down because their arguments suck. And all you people writing in to agree with Paul Krugman for the New York Times, you're irrational fools. And you've made a terrible, terrible accusation that needs to be answered. And then I veer over to... Why am I arguing with idiots? Why am I getting all exercised about an argument that has no cohesion? It's illogical. It's ridiculous. It's wrestling with a pig. It does you no good. You get dirty, and the pig enjoys himself. There's no reason to argue with a fool. But God dang it! And you know what's funny about this? This reminds me of, it's funny. We haven't done that much lately, but arguing about issues of race in America, it was big, especially a couple of years ago, or how to really help inner city kids, blah 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 blah. And these stupid idiots would constantly call in and say, "You guys are racists. You're racists." And it happened often enough that I started to think, I don't want to talk to black people if they're going to call me a racist when I express a respectful opinion. And in the same way, constantly being accused of inciting slaughter, I'm beginning to hate the people who are saying that. That's not helping political discourse, accusing people of being accessories to slaughter of little children, for God's sake. Paul Krugman, how dare you? And based on what?
Well, in all this conversation that's being had on both sides, got started, well, Sheriff Dupnick started it, I guess.
Right.
But
there was blood on the pavement still.
At the very root of it is this, well, you've probably seen the mugshot by now, completely homicidal maniac, crazy out of his head dude.
Right. You know, I've promised so many times I'd explain this dude's reasoning. So hang on. We'll get to your calls, we promise. This young man.
Do we have his mugshot link, Scott? I keep mentioning it. Can we make sure we have that link just in case people haven't seen it yet?
ArmstrongandGettyRadio.com. You got to see it. You have got to see it.
God, he's straight out of a network homicidal maniac movie.
Yeah, but like a lesser network. Not a good one. A low-budget one.
No, because it's too trite.
So this gentleman who is politically active, he was a Tea Party member, went to the rallies, listened to Rush Limbaugh, was resentful against left-wingers who were passing health care. Oh, no, wait a minute. Not a single shred of that is within 100,000 miles of the truth. And I could point out that to what extent you could pin any politics on this guy, it's the opposite of that. His Facebook page is a big Obama fan, but none of that has any significance here. A friend of his, who he used to hang with fairly extensively, has talked about this guy's long-time, multi-year grudge against Gabriella Giffords.
All his friends look like crazy people, too. They all look like snake owners.
He repeatedly, well said, derided her as a fake. In very Holden Caulfield-esque fashion, by the way. Catch her in the rye.
Bunch of phonies.
Yeah, a bunch of phonies. Loughner's animus toward Giffords intensified after he attended one of her campaign events. By the way, this is a couple of years before the infamous and completely irrelevant Sarah Palin picture of America with some sites of some sort on states.
It was before the Tea Party even existed.
Well, right.
He got to ask her a question, a crazy question that she didn't answer.
He did not like her answer, was unsatisfied, derided her as a fake, and seemed somewhat obsessed with her through the years every time her name would come up. His friend describes Loughner as being obsessed with, quote, lucid dreaming. That is, the idea that conscious dreams are an alternative reality that a person can inhabit and control, and says Loughner became more interested in this world than our reality. This gent's name is Tierney, Bryce Tierney. He says, quote, I saw his dream journal once. That's a golden piece of evidence. You want to know what goes on in Jared Loughner's mind? There's a dream journal that will tell you everything. Tierney, who's also 22, recalls Loughner complaining about a Giffords event he attended during the period back in August of 2007. He says he's unsure whether it's the same one mentioned in the charges, and he might have gone to some other rallies. Tierney notes it was a significant moment for Loughner. He told me that when she opened up the floor for questions, he asked a question. The question was, this is the beginning of his animus toward the young representative, the Blue Dog Democrat. His question was, what is government if words have no meaning? He said, can you believe it? They wouldn't answer my question. And ever since that, I thought she was fake. And since that moment, quote, he had something against her.
And she picked up on the fact that he was a nut job, apparently, and just moved on, didn't answer the question?
Well, to quote Giffords' answer, let me go on. Giffords' answer, whatever it was, didn't satisfy Loughner. He said, can you believe it? They wouldn't answer my question.
How do you answer that question,
because
crazy
she tried
person?
To, well, that's, his buddy says, quote, dude, no one's going to answer that. But he ignored Tierney. Quote, ever since that, he thought she was a fake and he had something against her. Tierney says he has no clue why Loughner might have shot all those people, but he notes, when I heard Gabrielle Giffords had been shot, I was like, oh my God. For some reason, I felt like I knew. I felt like if anyone was going to shoot her, it would be Jared. It wasn't a day-in, day-out thing, the animus, but maybe once in a while, if Giffords did something that was ridiculous, passed some stupid law or did something, he related that to people, blah, blah, blah. but he was obsessed because she wouldn't answer the question, what is government if words have no meaning? Paul Krugman. Take a suck of that.
Well, at least she was smart enough to not even answer that question, as opposed to try to wade into that.
I think she tried to diplomatically answer it and then move on.
Well, if he looked half as crazy as he looks in this mugshot, you wouldn't answer that question from somebody like that.
Do you remember when that crazy guy with the swordfish on his shirt accosted us at a personal appearance several years ago?
Yeah.
Because he has thrown around stuff like that, too, angrily at us, and we'd, kind of semi-agree with him and, just end it. So I know what she tried to do.
You can't talk to crazy people.
Nuh-uh. Nor fat men in swordfish shirts.